Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Śaṅkaram Loka Śaṅkaram Śaṅkaram Śaṅkaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Namah Pranavataye Shuddha-jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaye Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashiva Samarambham Vyasa Śaṅkara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Ask for that knowledge. Pratyatham Brahma Ekaksharam Pratyatham. And that knowledge is in the Shrutishira, in Vedanta. So may one listen totally with complete attention to the Shrutishira Vakyam. Shrutishira Vakyam is the Mahavaakya. So there are Mahavaakya and there are many Avantara Vakya to support the Mahavaakya. In fact, the word Mahavaakya itself is an example of not just looking at the word meaning. Mahavaakya is Vakya which is Mahat, great, large, big. But Mahavaakya, by understanding, is the Vakya which gives the oneness, Aikyam between Jiva and Ishvara. But that Mahavaakya is only a statement. Tat Tvam Asi. Aham Brahma Asmi. It's a statement. That is why it's called Mahavaakya. You need all the Avantara Vakya to go beyond just the Vachyartha. How do I examine this simple equation, to which, like a child seeing two sides of an equation and saying, how on earth can these be the same? How on earth can Aham be Brahman? Exactly like the child. So the Guru unfolds the Vakya through various Avantara Vakya and brings to the fore how to examine this sentence and see that the equation is possible, this oneness is possible. For that, you do Tatpada Vichara, Tat Tvam Asi, 3 words only. Examine the Tatpada. Then examine the Tvam Pada. Then understand how the two can be the same. That vichara is what in the next verse the author talks about. How to look at that. What is the vichara you do in order to understand what on the face of it looks like an incorrect equation. Just like the equation which said 7 plus 3 is the same as 23 minus 13. To the child, it looks so different. We also go through the same thing. We say, how can I be same as Ishvara? I am limited in every way, and we say Ishvara is unlimited. I am here and not anywhere else. We say Ishvara is everywhere. How can the two be the same? So the understanding of the correct understanding of the Tat Pada and the Tvam Pada. Tat Pada is Ishvara. Tvam Pada is I, the self. How do I understand each of these pada? Not simply from the word meaning. When I point to somebody and say Tvam, that Tvam, we stop with the body. We look a little closer, we say it cannot be the body. Various prakriya we've seen. Then it must be the prana. Then look at the prana carefully and say it cannot be the prana. Like that, you go each step. Can it be my thinking, my mana? No, that's fickle. Like that, can it be I, the karta? You look at each one, you can eliminate. This is something like what we will do whenever we do the third chapter of Panchadashi. How to look at each one and eliminate it as not being I. So the vichara of the Tvam Pada or Aham Pada and understanding the reality of I is one step. Similarly, understanding the reality of Tat Pada. And I said the method used in both cases is different. The Tvam Pada is examined by using what is called Vyatireka, Avyaya Vyatireka. That which is unchanging and that which changes. And the Tat Padam is looked at by Adhyaropa Apavada. By examining these, one arrives at the fact that Tvam cannot be anything other than consciousness. Tat cannot be anything other than Satyam, existence, isness. And by understanding both, one arrives at the sameness of the two, Tat and Tvam, Chit and Sat. This kind of analysis, vichara, is what is recommended in the third verse. Let's read the third verse. Vakyartha cha vicharyatam.
Vakyartah cha vicharyatam.
Vakyasya artha. The correct meaning of the Vakya, Mahavaakya, vicharyatam. May one examine, vicharam in fact is from char dhatu, gatau. May it be investigated by one. Vakyartascha vicharyatam. Shruti shira pakshas samasriyatam.
Shruti Shira Paksha Samashriyata.
Shruti shira paksha is the what is written in the Shruti shira Vedanta. Same word. May that be followed, may that be pursued. That thinking, that the thing may be pursued. Shruti shira paksha samasriyatam. So this is, in this line, examining us to having listened to the Shruti, do vichara, which is also part of Shravana. And follow what it says carefully. It is the sadhana for learning, knowing. Then it says, suviramyatam. May one withdraw from, may it be withdrawn from by one. What may be withdrawn? Dustarkaha. Dustarkaha is dustarkatu suviramyatam. Dustarkat is wrong logic. We will examine this in detail. And Shrutimatas tarko anusandhiyatam. Shrutimataha tarkaha anusandhiyatam. Shrutimataha tarkaha anusandhiyatam. May one follow, inquire into, closely investigate. That using logic, but making the Shruti as the pramana, pradhana, not simply using logic. With that, with this portion, that you eliminate all the wrong tarkas, because these doubts will always be there in the mind. Even after we have studied, done a lot of Shravanam, because of what we already know or we think we know, and because of argument given by others, which looks very logical, there will always be possibility, element of doubt. Śaṅkara. Pramana Śaṅkara will be there, Prameya Śaṅkara will be there. By Mananam, remove all the Śaṅkara. So if Shravanam is gaining Jnanam, Mananam is firming it up. Then he says, Brahmaimasmi vibhavyatam. May one repeatedly, having first understood and then removed all the doubts, may one repeatedly contemplate upon them, dwell upon the teaching, till it becomes my own. Aharaha garva parityajyatam. When we do that, garva comes from individual ahankara. That ahankara will drop. that I am the body, which is our pre-established opinion, may that be dropped. And any vada with jnanis be parityajyatam. With this, the verses cover Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. We will see how. Vakyarthascha vicharyatam. What is the nature of Tvam? What is the nature of Tat? And what is the equation that is established? On the face of it, it doesn't look right. You have certain concept of Tvam-pada. What is you? And we all have our own concept of what is Ishvara. The two are poles apart. Neither of them really fit with the other. So this we briefly discussed last time, is to go beyond just the Vachyartha. That's why it's an example, even the word Mahavaakya, if you just look at the Vakyartha, it doesn't make any, it gives us some meaning, which doesn't fit. Because of the artha that we have for the word tat and the word tvam are so different that you cannot possibly find a commonality between them. So one has to go beyond just the word meaning and go into an analysis of what the word intends to convey. And these are so contradictory that if you want to apply more logic to it, more grammar to it, it won't lead us anywhere. And the Upanishadic statements are cryptic. Even in Taittiriya Upanishad it says, no, the whole Jagat was created by Brahman with Maya. Initially the Pancha Mahabhutas, and then from there everything. The whole Jagat was created. And then it says, Tat Shrutva, having created this, Tadeva Anupravishat, entered into them. How do you understand something like this? You analyze it by grammar, every word you take, like you do in a Sanskrit class, and take each word and analyze it, it doesn't make any logical sense. And when that doesn't make logical sense like that, one has to look at the intended meaning, the lakshyartha. Now, you have to do this also, you need to use logic. What doesn't fit by simply looking at the vachyartha, meaning of the word, one has to go into the thing and analyze it, say, what is the intended meaning? This is true of a lot of things, even in our normal day-to-day conversation. When somebody says he's a tiger, does it mean that he has a face like a tiger? Or does he run as fast as a tiger? What is it trying to convey? that has to go beyond just the words. Or worse still, somebody says it's an ass. An ass means what? You keep on loading more and more stuff on his back. What is the intended meaning? That intended meaning is called lakshyartha. What's the lakshyam? What is it that he's trying to say? When you say tat tvam asi, there is a apposition between these words. They're both, tat and tvam, are both in the same vibhakti. Vibhakti here means the karta, the agent of action. Both are in the same vibhakti, and yet the meanings are so different. How can we equate them? This lakshyartha, there are normally in logic 3 different types of lakshana. One is called jahalakshana, where a word is replaced by another word. A common example given for that is, you ask for somebody, where is he? And you say, he's in the Ganga. Gangelerkar. You don't mean he's inside the Ganga. Where does he live? Gangelerkar. He is in the Ganga. He lives in the Ganga. What you really mean is he lives not in the Ganga, but in the bank of the Ganga. So a word is used which is replaced. This is called jahalakshana. The intended meaning is not the word that is used, but another word. Like that again, you have many examples in life normally. Then there's the other one called ajaha lakshana, where you don't drop the word, but you add another word. A very common example used there is the white runs, shvetaha dhavati. White doesn't run. Something else which is white runs. The white horse runs. Common example used. You look at the wife tells husband, "Paala paatuko, na kujo sabji vendane. Please look after the milk. I'm going to buy vegetables." And she comes back and you find the milk is all spilt over. And she said, "I asked you to look after it, no?" "Yeah, I looked after it. It looked nice, very nice. Came over." You're not asking him to shut the gas off when it comes up. Or mother tells a child, she has put some vadam, the papad you make to dry in the sun. And she tells him, make sure that crows don't come and eat it. So the fellow stands there very carefully with a stick in his hand, and every crow that comes, he shooes it away. When she comes back, she finds that half the thing is eaten up and gone. Hey, what happened? I told you to protect it, no? Yes, sir, I've protected it. No cow, no crow came here at all. I shoot them all away. Then what happened? Oh, that was the neighbor's cow that had come and eaten it. You didn't ask me to protect from the cow, you only asked me to protect from the crow. That means that crow means it is only a symbolic thing. You are protected from anything. Therefore, the meaning goes past the word meaning. You add another. Crows, cows, and everything, including the neighbor's children.
The third possibility, Swami G, he himself must have consumed half of it. Third
And we
possibility.
looked at the Jaha Lakshana, or what is called Bhagatyaga Lakshana, as the method to look at a word like Tattvamasi. Sentence like Tattvamasi. You drop some of the words or some of the characteristics, and you retain what is common. Like our famous Devadatta example. Devadatta remains the same despite the fact that the two Devadatta you're comparing, one in time somewhere else and place somewhere else, in characteristics completely different. You drop all that and retain only that common element of Devadatta. And you recognize the Devadatta. It is the same kind of analysis that is done by saying Tat-pada and Tvam-pada. There are certain things which are looking very different between the two. So that bhaga, that portion of that you drop. You do tyaga off. And what is left is what is the real nature of Tat and the real nature of Tvam, Ishvara and Jiva. And then you can see that the same. In essential nature, it is the same. It is like, what is the essential nature? If you have hot water, is heat an essential nature of water? No. Heat is an added characteristic. But if you take fire, it is the essential nature of fire. You cannot remove it. You can have a small fire or even a spark and a big conflagration. Both will have heat, but they look different. So one goes beyond the surface differences and looks at the essential nature. That is the vichara. So vakyartascha vicharyatam. Analyze the vakya not by using grammar or only logic. One does it through an analysis called mimamsa. Because when I read a sentence, I never read that in isolation, or should not read it in isolation. That exercise you leave to Zakir Naik. You will only take that one bit and say your Shastra says like this. But you take the Purva Para. What does it say? Where is it? Throughout the Shastra, you take any text, it is the same common message. Within the text, you see what has come before, what is going to come later. Then it makes sense. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, when you read only one verse, sometimes the verse makes no sense. But if you've been reading that sequentially, then also sometimes that makes sense because you've not read what is going to come. That is why all these texts, you never read once. You have to read over and over again. Because you have to also see what comes later. Purva Para. In fact, there are 6 characteristics of Mimamsa, Shadlinga. Upakrama Upasamhara. What is the opening sentence? What is the pratigya? And how does it conclude? Now, if you don't take this into account and take one in between, then you will get wrong meanings. That mimamsa exercise has to be done. Not only upakrama upasamhara, you also look at apurvata. Not a repetition of what is already known. A repetition of what is already known is called anuvada. But new knowledge. It is why if I know already that I am limited, I am therefore very different from Ishvara, there is no point stating that. Shastra therefore does not say you are different from Ishvara. It says something new, something unique. Hey, you are Ishvara. That's called apurvata. And then of course you have to understand why it says that. Shastra also says what is logically correct. It's called upapatti. It cannot defy logic totally. If it looks like it's defying logic, it has to be analyzed. See where is the difference that we see. Then there is element called arthavada. Praise. That there is a definite meaning and purpose to what it says. For example, Atmavit Shokam Tarati. The one who understands this, what has been said, does not suffer grief, is not subject to grief. That's Arthavada. Then there's a fifth element called Abhyasa. Abhyasa is repetition. Because this is an apurvata is there, it is something which is new, something which is not already known, and therefore very important to understand. It is repeated many times. When Shvetaketu went to his father Uddhalaka and asked for that knowledge, knowing which he knows everything. Father told him 9 times with 9 different examples. Tattvamasi he Shvetaketu. Repeat again, till it becomes clear. Abhyasa. And what this tells us should have a phala. The phala is mokṣā. This kind of analysis, a very detailed analysis of this kind in Mimamsa is done in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. After we have studied several Upanishads and understood what it says, one day we will also do the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Very fine analysis. So this kind of Mimamsa analysis, when you do on these Vakya, it becomes clear as daylight. Vakyatasya vicharyatam. May the Vakyartha be analyzed. And what is the Vakya? Shrutishira Vakya. Shrutishira Pakshas Samashriyatam. May what is said and understood be followed, be pursued. by 1. As I said, in all this, logic is an important element. But using only logic leads to disaster. Even if the logic sounds very logical, we're all thinking people and therefore we appreciate logic. But logic can be very damaging. If I tell you, logic says, all grass is green. The leaf on this tree is green. Logically, I can draw a conclusion that therefore this leaf on this tree is grass. Logical analysis. You can easily spot the flaw in this. No. Leaf is not grass. Because when you said all grass is green, you did not imply or say that everything green is grass. You only said all grass is green. So you can easily understand where the flaw in the logic is. But there are many other cases where the flaw is not so easy to spot. There are people come up with logic, two types of people. One is a Nastika, Buddhists, Jains, etc. They have their own logic. Where is the basis for the logic? Ille. Logic has to be based on certain assumptions. That assumption itself, one has to examine. There's another type of person who comes up with a logic who is a astika, who accepts Veda as a pramana. Who says, look, this whole Jagat is real. How can you say it's not real? I can see it, feel it, touch it. And another one who says, how can you say I'm Ishvara? It's so obvious that I cannot be Ishvara. I'm so different. But they will quote various Smriti, they will quote Purana, they will even quote or misquote Upanishads, where it says Tat Tvamasi, they will interpret it as Atat Tvamasi. Because they'll use grammar and logic and atatva. Or another person will come up and say, you're part of Brahman. Ignoring totally the fact that elsewhere it says Brahman is partless. But they will want to extract one and create a logic saying, you're part of Brahman. And sometimes the logic they come up with can be very convincing. Especially if he's got a gift of the gab, he can talk fluently, he can convince people. Like in America, this is a true story. One fellow made millions by convincing millions of people to buy a stone, but he called it pet stone. It actually happened. He picked up stones, nicely clean, put it in a box, and called it pet stone, gave it a name. There were instruction sheets on how to maintain your pet stone. And millions of Americans bought it. It's how well he presents his case. Let me give another example. 1 plus 1, we all know, is 2. One fellow comes and says, no, it is not 2, and I will prove it. So you say, how can you prove it? It is so obvious, 1 plus 1 is 2. So he says, okay, let A be equal to 1. Let B also be equal to 1. A is equal to 1, B is equal to 1. Therefore, A is equal to B. I'm proving it mathematically. A is equal to B. Now, both sides, now we multiply by A. You get A squared on one side, and you get AB on the other side. Now, when you do the operation on both the same operation, the equation remains unchanged. Now you subtract B squared from both sides. You have A squared minus B squared on the left. On the right, we have AB minus B squared. All logical and clear so far. Now you break them into factors. A squared minus B squared can be written as A minus B into A plus B. Mathematically correct. On this side, AB minus B squared can be written as B in brackets A minus B. Correct? You just removed the B as a common factor. Now you have A plus B into A minus B equal to B into A minus B. Now divide both sides by A minus B. Common factor you can cut out. Therefore, now you have A plus B is equal to B. Now substitute the values that you gave initially. A is equal to 1, B is equal to 1. So now we have what? A plus B is 1 plus 1 equal to 1. All logical, all correct. I'm only using pure logic. Some of you may have spotted where the problem with the logic is. Particularly if you have studied mathematics, you may think. This incidentally was a problem that one of my classmates gave me when I was in class 7 or something like that. But can you spot the problem? You know this is not correct. You know 1 plus 1 cannot be 1. And if the presenter is very good, he can, if not convince you, he can certainly confuse you. So logic per se, be very cautious. Shastra says you cannot use Shastra, but logic without Shastra. Only logic will lead to this kind of problems. You can think about where the problem is later, where the fault is later. There is a fault somewhere. Obviously, there is a fault. Like that, when somebody comes and says, Atatvamasi, you are not that. There is a fallacy somewhere. Why do I say there's a fallacy somewhere? Swami used to talk of a story of Murari. One fellow went to one guru said, like these people, he said, please teach me Brahmajnana. Now, he happened to be an Advaitin. So he taught him for many years. Tattvamasi. You are Ishvara, you are Brahman. He was very confused. It was not very easy to grasp. Somebody told him, this is not the way to look at it. There's another Swami who will teach you the correct way of looking at it. And since he could not understand very easily, he went to that guru. For the next 12 years, he sat with the guru and he told him, taught him a lot of grammar, taught him a lot of logic, nyaya, tarka, and taught him that atattvamasi, you are not that. You are not Narayana. Very convincing. He used all the tarka, all the logic, all the nyaya, everything, and he taught him, you are not Narayana. You are different from Narayana. He felt he's understood because the logic was so powerful. So he went back to the old guru and wanted to have a debate with him. Now that he understood, spent so many years studying. And before going, he decided to go and get a shave done. So he caught hold of one barber. There's one barber in Rishikesh called Murari. Swamiji uses him as an example. He went to Murari. Never went to school, this Murari. Doesn't know anything other than shaving. So he went to him and asked him to shave. After he had removed all the unruly beard, he looked at himself in the mirror and he saw Tejas. All this was covered. No? And he said to Murari, oh, you must be Narayana. You brought so much Tejas into my face. I want to prostrate before you. Murari was shocked. He said, oh, you are such an educated person. I'm not even going to school. I know nothing. I am not Narayana. I am not Narayana. Please don't prostrate in front of me. He started running away. This fellow started chasing him. Hey, no, you are Narayana, you are Narayana. No, I am not Narayana. Suddenly it struck him. If this fellow who's not studied anything at all, he also knows that he is not Narayana, then how can I convince anybody that I'm not Narayana? Why should I convince anybody? He also knows I'm not Narayana. What am I doing studying for 12 years? Atattvamasi is not something for which you need another pramana. Everybody knows. That is the starting point. That is why we are saying we have to study, because I know I am not Narayana. To know something which is different from what I think I know, one needs to study. If I already know something, why should I study? Why should Shastra spend so much writing so many Upanishads saying Tattvamasi? Why should Uddalaka talk so many times to Shvetaketu saying you are Ishvara, Tattvamasi, Hey Shvetaketu? You don't need anything. So neither by purely using logic, which is not backed by Shastra. In fact, most of these logicians people call themselves rationalists will tell you, no, everything has to be proved. If you say, I am Ishvara, you have to start by saying the fact that I know I am not Ishvara and prove to me. Then only you'll accept. I am a rationalist. They will never accept the word Shraddha. They're a rationalist. Not knowing that what you can know by the faculties available to us and the buddhi available to us can know anything about the external world, objects of the world, objects of perception, objects of knowledge. But none of them is any good for learning about the knower. What you're trying to find is about the knower. Therefore, and not only that, the so-called rationalists base everything on two factors. One is a certain basic assumption. And two is the 5 pramanas. And both of them are inadequate. And you see that in the world. Whatever has been established by rationality undergoes change in time. Every single concept developed by science, without exception, has changed with time. And if it is changing with time, it cannot be Satyam. The best example for science being ever changing is the medical science. They will tell us one thing today, another thing tomorrow. All these years they told us, don't eat coconut oil. It will create cholesterol. Don't eat ghee. Based on some assumptions. Today, the same scientists or their next generation tells us you must have at least 2 spoonfuls of coconut oil. You will not get Alzheimer's. You should have at least 2 spoonfuls of ghee. You will not get joint pain. Same fellows. If it's going to change like that, every science, the whole of science is based on Newtonian physics, Newton's laws of physics. Now we know that Newton's law apply only within a limited range of time and space. If you go in distances smaller or bigger than that, it doesn't work. So the rationalists who only apply logic Yavat jivet sukham jivet rinam krutva ghritam pibhet. My senses can only say this life. I don't know anything about previous life. I don't know anything about future life. Therefore, as long as you live, enjoy. Even if you have to borrow, rinam krutva ghritam pibhet. Indicative saying, enjoy. This ghee. Once the body is bhasma, what is that? There's nothing after that. You don't want to come back in that body. So enjoy. This is one logic. So this kind of logical conclusions based purely on logic, which is dependent upon human brain, will sooner or later lead to wrong conclusions. Therefore, this Sādhana Pañcakaṃ in the next line of this verse says, Dustarkat suviramyatam. Stay away from wrong logic. Any logic based only on logic, any conclusion based only on logic will lead to wrong inference. May this kind of dustarka be totally withdrawn by one. Dustarkat suviramyatam. Viramyatam is take leave of. Totally. Suviramyatam. You have to use logic. It is part of the teaching of Shastra. It expects you to think, collate all the facts, analyze it, and where there are discrepancies, ask and understand the difference. Vedanta, in fact, is the only knowledge on a religious background. That's why it's called spiritual. Everything else, including Karmakanda Veda, it is the only one which can lead us to the right conclusions. But using logic, everywhere else, you have to accept what it says. Here it encourages you to use logic. In the first place, you use logic to negate what is not. Naiti, naiti. You use logic to negate what is a clearly wrong conclusion. Śaṅkara does a lot of analysis like this. He beats these logicians using their own logic. That is how he wins over all of these people. Their own logic he uses to show where the flaw in the logic is. So only logic is not good enough. Because we accepted Shastra as a pramana, that has to be pradhana. On that we use logic. We don't use logic to dismiss what it says. We use logic not to substantiate what it says. We use logic to understand what it says. We use logic to remove wrong inferences and conclusions that we may have arrived at, either on our own or because of hearing or reading somebody else. Great Mahan. I'm not discounting these people. You read so many books written by great brains. In that, I include Stephen Hawking, who calls himself a rationalist, who says there is no God. Great brain, IQ of a very, very high order. But he uses only logic. Unless one accepts this pramana, and having accepted the pramana, unless one can understand it correctly, we will always end up in a situation which is open to mistakes. Therefore, dustarka suviramyatam. And what should I follow? Shrutimatas tarkas anusrindhiyatam. Shrutimata tarka. Tarka based on Shruti. Logic is necessary. In fact, logic, without logic, we cannot arrive at anything. That logic we use having understood what the Shastra says. That logic we use to negate what is incorrect. Although you've done Shravanam for so long, these inputs are always there, already gathered inputs, additional inputs coming from elsewhere. That has to be negated through a process called Mananam. Mananam, again, a wonderful example. Literal meaning may be contemplation. People will translate it as contemplation. But Mananam, if you look at the Lakshyartha, Mananam is removing doubts. Any samshaya that may be there, brought in for another input by somewhere else, or by my own conclusion, my own thinking. That is Mananam. So the two steps, first two steps, the Guru will advocate for the Shishya who is prepared, who's come to the Guru, and Brahmaikaksharam Arthyatam, who has come and asked for this knowledge, this Paravidya, he will say yes. And he will say, do Shravanam and Mananam. That is what these two lines cover. Vakyatasya vicharyatam Shutishira pakshas samashriyatam. Shravanam, analysis, vichara, dustarkat suviramyatam. Totally give up incorrect logic. Incorrect logic means anything which is just logic. Kevala tarka, don't follow. But tarka which is Shrutimata, Anusandhiyata. With that, we have more or less completed the process. The sadhaka has already taken all these steps. 16 steps in the first two verses, leading up to this Shravana Manana in these two lines. After this, there is only Nididhyasanam and a few other processes which will lead to that moksha jnanam, which we will look at next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.